I'm very emotional, very upset, crying, and it just doesn't really have a source. It just feels like that emotion is so big, and that's the only thing that I have in my brain. I feel very lucky to live in New York because you can cry anywhere.
Well, that's the crazy thing. When I cry, it's literally over nothing. Like sometimes I beat myself up because I'm like, why are you crying? Like you have a job, you're healthy. Like I have, I'm lucky, but I will cry. I think there was one time I just got back from a trip, like to the Caribbean and like beautiful place, happy. And I come home and literally I start crying.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jessica Yu. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and senior director of patient experience at Hims & Hers. There are essentially two different types of tears. Emotional tears are the tears that we think about when we ask ourselves the question, why am I crying? These are the tears that we experience when we have intense emotions. Things like anger, sadness, despair, loneliness, even love and joy. Non-emotional tears are kind of the more functional tears. They're the tears that we cry when there's some kind of insult or injury to our eye. Maybe we've gotten some kind of irritant in our eye. Maybe we've just chopped an onion.
I think after a really good, really big cry, I often feel a little bit silly. Like, I've gotten all the emotion out and I'm a little bit drained. And I'm like, actually, maybe I'm okay. Like maybe that was just what I needed.
Evolutionarily, crying can communicate vulnerability, which allows us to create bonds with each other. Studies show that crying releases endorphins, which can lower cortisol and improve mood.
After I cry, I usually feel good. I mean, that's the process of crying, right? You feel like relieved immediately after.
There's almost always a reason for crying, but you might just need to figure it out.
It feels like a deep exhale. It feels it's like a beautiful release. It's like the feeling of coming above water and like getting that first like suck in of like fresh air. Like that's what a good cry feels like. And it's a really healthy way to let out and process emotion.
I compartmentalize things. I don't really face my issues head on. I'll let them build up instead. And they end up building up to a point where it's just like, it ends up overflowing. And then I'll end up like crying in the parking lot for no reason. And I'm like, why am I crying? And it's because like my body is telling me that I needed to release all of these like pent up emotions.
A time when I would just sort of cry out of the blue was certainly within the first 6 months of giving birth, where I was alone a lot. I really lacked confidence. I was exhausted, confused. My life was completely different. I just wasn't ready. And I think being alone with my thoughts that much, I would just find myself sort of having emotions and crying a lot.
I feel like every time I'm crying and I don't understand why I'm crying, when I start thinking about it more like later on, it's usually burnout or too much on my plate, or I need to scale back. I'm just like exhausted, frustrated. And I haven't been addressing whatever there is.
One reason we cry is because we feel anxious. When we feel anxious, we're worrying. We're using our body's energy to think about the things that we're worried about, to feel fear. And that can cause us to cry. Stress can also cause us to cry. When we feel stressed out, we're usually responding to some kind of fear or threat. And there's an emotional and physical burden associated with that can make us cry. Depression is another reason that we cry. The most common symptom of depression is low mood, sadness, even a sense of hopelessness. And that can create a sense of emptiness that causes us to cry.
I recently started going to therapy and I learned how to cry. I learned how to let myself feel deep enough to cry. And it's really beautiful. And I think that's something that my therapist has allowed me to see, that sadness can be beautiful, that it does not need to be something that you run away from.
Grief is probably the most common reason that people cry. People grieve because they've lost a loved one. People grieve because they've lost a relationship. They've ended a relationship. People grieve because they're going through some kind of major life change. And grief is another one of those emotionally laden experiences that can cause stress and cause us to cry. Grief can feel like different things to different people, but oftentimes it's this overwhelming sadness that we just can't get over. When it comes to grief, there are a couple of different things to know. One is that grief takes time, and there's really no right or wrong way to go through grief. Some people say that the grieving process takes them a couple of weeks. Others say that it takes a couple of months or years. Other people say that grief never really goes away. Now, the one thing that I would say is that if you experience grief and it's so overwhelming that you just can't get through your daily tasks anymore, that you're having anxiety, depression, even thoughts of not wanting to be here, get help right away. Find a mental health professional, engage in therapy, look for medications, get help.
So my medication for me has really helped with crying. I used to be someone who cried very easily, drop of a hat, stressful situations, anger, any sort of negative emotion. It was kind of a knee-jerk experience for me. But ever since I started taking my medication, it has really helped me. It provides a little bit of a layer over those intense emotions. So it's easier to kind of logically respond to situations and avoid those like heated reactions.
It's unclear why some people are more prone to crying. Maybe it's a little bit of biology, a little bit of genetics, maybe a little bit of the way that we grew up and were socialized to things like tears, and maybe it's just our emotions.
It feels great after a good cry. It sort of depends on the context, but I think usually it's a good thing. I think it's very cleansing, and that's sort of when you're closest to your most vulnerable self.
If you've noticed yourself crying more than usual, or crying out of the blue, and you're not sure why, if you notice that maybe you're experiencing something like anxiety, depression, extreme stress, premenstrual dysphoric disorder, look for help. You can engage in therapy or talk to your primary care provider about medication options.
After I cry, like a really, really, really good cry, I feel amazing. Honestly, I feel like a weight is lifted off my shoulders. I feel like, I tell myself like, wow, I should do this more, you know?
One thing that I like to tell people, especially those who cry in my office and apologize for it, is that crying is not a bad thing at all. We all have emotions. We all cry from time to time. And it's not always a cause for concern, and certainly not something to be embarrassed about.
I think it feels like, when you're doing like a really big puzzle or like a 1,000-piece puzzle, like you dump out all the puzzle pieces and it's just like chaos, but then you sort them into like edges and corners and all these things by color. And you're able to just kind of like take the deep breath and be like, okay, I can solve this. I think for me, after I cry, I feel like, all right, now kind of got that aside. Like I let myself feel that. And now I kind of have a more logical viewpoint of kind of what I'm feeling, and I'm able to kind of take stock of what's really there.
Look at me. I'm here crying, but just know that this too shall pass. You will be okay. I've made it this far. I have no intention of going anywhere, so you can make it too.